We will begin with war. Because when a country is at war, there is no more important story day in and day out. The one story that you know every historian will write about when looking at the year 2026 is Donald Trump's war. And in that war, historians will find everything they need to know about Donald Trump's incompetence, Donald Trump's laziness, Donald Trump's ignorance, and yes, Donald Trump's madness. What happens when a madman starts a war? As of tonight, the United States military has completed 150 days of war service under Commander-in-Chief Trump. Donald Trump's war is now 5 months old. David Sanger, a New York Times reporter specializing in foreign policy, once participated in an interview with Donald Trump in which Donald Trump said the only limit on him, the only limit, is, quote, my own morality. That's what Donald Trump said was the only limit on him, which is to say no limit at all, because we all know just how much morality Donald Trump has. David Sanger writes this 5-month assessment of Donald Trump and his war. In recent weeks, he has seemed trapped, his presidency gradually consumed by a war he cannot find his way out of. He has discovered limits on his power that he could have scarcely imagined as he began full combat operations on February 28th, when he set out goals for a swift end to Iran's nuclear program and the overthrow of the country's government. 5 months later, those goals remain almost entirely unaccomplished. The shipping that crawled to a stop in the Strait of Hormuz, then was opened for a few short weeks, is back to a trickle. He has said publicly that he knows there is no appetite for sending in ground troops. Those limits have left him deeply frustrated, his aides say, and have made him more erratic, even by Trumpian standards. Erratic is the kindest possible description of Donald Trump's public utterances. He has been speaking in circles and self-contradicting language from the very first day of his war, and he continues to do it every time he talks about the war that he started but obviously does not understand. The American people seem to understand Donald Trump's war much better than he does. A new CBS poll shows that a large majority of Americans believe Donald Trump's war is going badly. 63% of Americans say that Donald Trump's war is going badly. 30% say it's going very badly. That same poll shows that Americans want what Americans have always wanted when an inexplicable war waged by an American president is going badly, very badly. They want that war to end right now. 67% of Americans want Donald Trump's war to end now. 65% of Americans disapprove of Donald Trump's handling of his war. Donald Trump obviously has no idea what to do. He agrees to ceasefires, then he bombs, then he agrees to another ceasefire, then he bombs. If the bombing were working, there would obviously be no reason to stop the bombing. And Donald Trump keeps saying things like this.
Iran took a beating over the last 14 days, and they asked us very nicely, please stop, let's meet. And that's what we are right now. We'll see what happens. If we don't make a deal, we go back to the same thing.
That's Donald Trump today saying a version of what he has said several times in the past. And so his threat to the Iranians and his promise to Americans is that he will do what doesn't work. That is his promise to 67% of Americans who want Donald Trump to end his war now. His promise to them is that he will keep up the bombing campaign that has achieved nothing if Iran doesn't reach some kind of agreement with him. But Americans watched Iran reach an historic agreement with President Obama negotiated by Secretary of State John Kerry, the most important diplomatic breakthrough of the 21st century. And they watched Donald Trump come into office as president and immediately violate that agreement that Iran had negotiated with the United States of America. And then they watched Donald Trump dramatically sign in this war a memorandum of understanding with Iran, which appeared to stop Donald Trump's war, but not for long. And so Americans have every right to expect that any agreement Donald Trump reaches with Iran, Donald Trump will then violate, because that's what he does with agreements with Iran. He violates them. And if Iran violates it, then the war will continue. That's the likelihood. The war will continue because Donald Trump has no idea what to do in the war that he started. Donald Trump wants to be the first American president to win a war from the sky. A war. Win the war from the sky without sending a single soldier onto a battlefield to fire a single shot. But now there is reporting that someone is trying to tell Donald Trump that bombing won't work. Yesterday, Axios reported the top U.S. military commander in the Middle East, Admiral Brad Cooper, recommended stopping the bombing campaign around the Strait of Hormuz because it has reached the limit of its effectiveness, according to two sources with knowledge of his position. The recommendation by Cooper, the commander of the U.S. Military Central Command, together with other advisors, impacted President Trump's decision on Friday to pause U.S. strikes against Iran, the sources said. It was an acknowledgement by both military and civilian advisors to the president that there are limits to what can be accomplished through military action, and specifically an air power campaign. So what has Donald Trump done now that he's faced with that hard reality about the war? He has retreated to sheer fantasy. He spent the day yesterday putting out social media posts, fantasizing about bad things happening to American celebrities and entertainers who should never be on the mind of a commander-in-chief during wartime. And he issued a series of social media posts in which he imagined himself, hallucinated himself, seizing Iranian oil tankers. He also issued AI-generated fantasies about the war that he is actually waging. He's running a real war, and he's fantasizing this kind of thing about an imagined attack on Karg Island. And the man who's supposed to be figuring out how to win or end his war tomorrow spends his time fantasizing about himself and George Washington. And let's just linger on that image and consider the depths of madness revealed by Donald Trump himself right there during his war. Stupidity cannot be anticipated. Insanity cannot be anticipated. And that's why you could never possibly have imagined that image of Donald Trump and George Washington being put out by a president of the United States until Donald Trump did it. And then when he did it, when he flashes his madness like that on social media, even though we can never anticipate exactly what graphic form it will take, it is completely empty of surprise because everyone knows how crazy the President of the United States is. And no one is calling for the use of the 25th Amendment to remove the madman in that image from the office of the presidency because the entire professional Republican Party in Washington has accepted fully the madness of Donald Trump. The American news media has understandably run out of words to express the horror of the madness of Donald Trump. And the entire world knows that the man who started the war in Iran and on the 149th day of that war put out that image of himself with George Washington is a madman. That is what has been proved beyond a reasonable doubt in 5 months of Donald Trump's war. And then in the now over 10 years of Donald Trump's political career. On Friday night, Donald Trump put on a bow tie and went into a hotel ballroom full of people to talk to himself. No one else was listening. Instead of spending the time either explaining his war to an audience of reporters at the White House Correspondents' Dinner or something else, Donald Trump spent the evening watching reporters win awards for reporting exposure of his incompetence and or his corruption. His hour-long speech, which I did not watch and would not watch, but heard about from reporters soon afterward, was yet another demonstration of just how far gone Donald Trump is. Here is a piece of the speech that I did watch this afternoon. It's the only piece that I watched. It's a typical, inexplicable passage of what was on the mind of the man who cannot figure out how to end the war he started.
And we had a sort of little preview, and then Anderson Cooper was going to fight Lawrence O'Donnell. I'm not a fan of Lawrence O'Donnell. I like Anderson, actually, because he's covered me well for many years. Then he went bad as soon as I went for politics. But for years, he loved interviewing. I did so many interviews with him, and he was great. But, you know, he's got a little different persuasion than me in many ways, actually. And Lawrence O'Donnell, never liked him, never thought he had any talent. But he's still making a living, so I can't knock it. But we had a contest for who had the lowest ratings and the lowest IQ on television. And that was actually Don Lemon, I think. You know, when I said that he's the dumbest man on television, I said, you know, when you say some things, you never make a comeback. It's not like, oh, gee, hey, Don, let's have dinner some night. But I know what I'm saying.
I know what I'm saying. He's in the middle of waging a war. And that's what he's saying. I know what he's saying. I know what I'm saying, he said. If he does know what he's saying, he's the only person who knows what he is saying. No one has any idea what he meant in that passage or any other passage in that speech. The Iranians he is waging war against don't know what he's saying. They don't understand a word he's saying because no one does. No one in that room Friday night knew what he was saying.